Dad, you're nothing but dead weight to us. Stay out of our lives. No, Stelvine. Those words came from my own daughter, Anna, as she sat across the table with her husband, Mark. Her voice was cold, stripped of any love I thought still remained. Mark didn't hesitate to twist the knife deeper. He leaned back in his chair, lips curling into a smirk. You'd only humiliate us in Florida. People like you don't belong at a 5-star resort. Is so. The room fell silent, except for the clatter of my spoon against the chipped bowl in front of me. My grandson Noah blinked at me, confusion filling his young eyes. Why can't Grandpa come? Anna's jaw tightened as she snapped back. Because he drags us down. He makes us look poor. These no do heaven know that not. I felt my chest tighten, not from age or weakness, but from the cruelty I never imagined would come from my own child. Memories rushed back nights I skipped dinner so Anna could eat. Years I spent bending my back in factories. The promises I whispered to her when her mother passed, that I'd never let her feel alone. All of it crushed under the weight of her contempt. I managed a thin smile, though my hands shook as I placed my fork down. They thought they knew me, a fragile old man, clinging to a small pension and an empty house. They believed I was finished, irrelevant, but they had no idea what I was still capable of. And they had no idea how far a broken father would go to remind them who he truly was. I washed the dishes that night as if the plates could explain what had just happened. The sink hissed. The window showed a strip of winter sky. My hands moved from habit. Plate, rinse, rack, breathe. The radio hummed a soft song. I turned the knob off. The house fell into the kind of silence you can hear. This is a small brick house outside Cleveland. When Ruth was alive, she filled it with warm smells and easy laughter. She sang while she chopped onions. She believed dinner could mend anything. After she died, I kept her copper pot on the stove even when I no longer cooked stews. I polish it once a month. It shines the way her wedding ring used to shine in late light. I met Ruth at a church picnic by Lake Erie. I had grease under my nails from a double shift at the auto shop. We married in a plain church. We held on to each other. When Anna was born, I cried and pretended it was sweat from mowing the yard. Ruth laughed and placed our daughter on my chest. We promised to give her what we never had. I worked 2 jobs. Mornings at the shop. Nights driving a bus where the stops are dark and the riders are tired. In between, I carried Ruth to her checkups and later to her treatments. At 3 in the morning, when pain would not let her sleep, I sang off key and she squeezed my hand and said the song was enough. After Ruth passed, I kept the house standing by routine. I changed the furnace filter before the first frost. I shoveled the sidewalks so kids could walk to school on clean paths. I stocked the pantry with soup and coffee. On Sundays, I oiled my work boots even though no one saw them. It felt like a small way to say, I am still a man who shows up. Anna loved stories about faraway cities. She read with a flashlight and begged me for trips I could not always afford. I said yes when I could, and found a way when I could not. We drove to museums in a car that used more oil than gas. We ate picnic dinners while parked near the runway. She dreamed about skylines and tall hotels. Then life accelerated. College. A job in Miami. Calls turned into texts. Texts turned into short replies sent from rides across a city I had never seen. I stayed in Cleveland. I mended the fence. I replaced shingles after a windstorm. I learned to drink coffee alone. When she introduced me to Mark, I tried my best. He shook my hand like a man testing a door hinge. He talked fast about growth and metrics. I asked what he loved about my daughter. He said she was driven. I wanted to hear that he loved her laugh. There were visits that felt like interviews. Dinner reservations where the waiter knew their names. I wore my best jacket. She said I looked fine, but reminded me not to tell long stories. Mark ordered wine. I tasted the wine and the distance. I gave them what I could. A quilt Ruth had sewn. A box of photographs labeled in her careful hand. Money when the apartment deposit ran higher than expected. No one asked where I found it. I learned to say I was fine. After the wedding, Anna walked through this house like it was a museum of a life that no longer fit her. She touched the piano key that sticks. She held the copper pot and set it back without a word. That night I heard her crying in the room that used to be hers. I stood with my hand on the doorknob and did not go in. Tonight, when she told me to stay away from Florida, the ground inside me shifted. I carried the plates to the sink because my body knows how to move when my heart cannot. I counted my breaths like a man counting screws before he reassembles a chair. I am not a dramatic man. I make lists. I fix small things. But there are breaks you cannot mend with a screwdriver. I went to the garage and turned on the bare bulb. On the shelf sat the cigar box Ruth once used for recipe cards. I keep other things in it now. Letters. Receipts. A folded map of a coast I have not seen in years. I brushed dust from the lid and thought about the words, dead weight. I have carried this family across every hard season. I carried love until my back hurt. Tonight I set that weight down in my mind, and something inside me stood up. The night settled deep. Somewhere a train horn sounded and faded. The house breathed with me. I stood in the living room, where the old couch sags in the middle. I pictured Anna as a child standing on that sag to sing during pretend concerts. Ruth would clap and cheer. The memory made my eyes sting. I let the sting become tears. Before bed, I shined the watch Ruth gave me for our 10th anniversary. It still ticks 5 seconds fast. I stared at the man in the mirror. He stared back and did not look away. I whispered goodnight to Ruth. You would have told me to stand up. You would have said love can be firm without being cruel. I would not chase them. I would not beg for a chair at their table. I would not let their judgment define who I am. Somewhere between sorrow and pride, there is a path called dignity. I stepped onto it and felt my chest loosen. I did not sleep. Morning came thin and gray. I brewed coffee and stood by the window. Frost traced white on the glass. I wondered when kindness became rare. I wondered when my home stopped feeling safe. The cracks began long ago. They did not look like cracks at first. They looked like jokes that did not land. Small looks across a table. Messages left unread. Anna began to answer with one-word replies. Busy. Later. Fine. I told myself she was building a life. I told myself to give her room. The first hard moment came the winter after her move to Miami. She asked if I could help with a security deposit. I said yes before she finished the sentence. I wired the money and asked for the lease so Ruth's old files could hold it. She never sent it. When I asked again, she said paper was not important. Only a formality. Spring brought a visit where Mark watched me the way a man watches a meter. Constant. Narrow. He asked about my savings. He asked about the equity in this house. He smiled without warmth. He said they might flip a place and asked if I could co-sign. My chest went tight. I said no. He said credit is only trust with better clothes. I said my word is my word and I do not lend what I cannot afford to lose. At dinner he joked about my jacket. He told the waiter I had the look of a coach from a small school. The table laughed. I laughed to be polite. I drove home with the window open to keep from crying. Thanksgiving hurt in a new way. I arrived with a sweet potato pie the way Ruth made it. Brown sugar. Pecans. Extra spice. Anna said the presentation did not match her theme. She placed my pie on a counter behind candles. It never reached the table. She said she forgot. I washed the dish before I left. There were other signs. A weekend call when she asked if I could pick up Noah from practice. I drove in rain and waited in the cold. She did not thank me. She thanked the rideshare driver who brought her home from a salon. She said it was brave to cut her hair. I said she looked lovely. She said, "At least someone thinks so." After the holidays, she posted photos from parties with perfect glasses and perfect smiles. I pressed like and set the phone down. I looked at the copper pot and felt silly. I told myself, love has seasons. I told myself, winter ends. Then came the day I stopped by with a tool bag. The guest bath sink was leaking. I shut off the water and changed the ring. Mark stood in the doorway and filmed me for a story. He added a caption, "Real salt of the earth." I heard the laugh under the words. He handed me a 10 as if I were a stranger in a service line. I put it back in his hand and asked for a glass of water. He rolled his eyes and said I was proud for no reason. Calls grew shorter. When she did call, she put me on speaker while she answered emails. She sighed when I asked about her day. She said I worried too much. She said my questions made her feel small. I told her I would listen more and ask less. She said good and hung up. Noah began to repeat things he heard at home. He asked why my car smelled like old books. He said, "Mom says your clothes are from another century." He did not mean harm. He looked at me with love and curiosity. I told him old books smell like time, and that time is a perfume you earn. I tried to address it with Anna. We sat at a cafe with loud music. I said I feel distance. She said distance happens when people do not grow. She said she was growing fast and I was standing still. I asked what growth meant. She said it meant rooms with views and tables with the right guests. She said it meant never having to explain yourself. I stared at foam hearts in my cup and did not argue. I went home and wrote her a letter. I wrote in slow lines. I said love is more than the price of a chair. I said home is a place where a pie does not need a theme. I said I miss the girl who used to stand on the couch and sing. I placed the letter in the cigar box. In early fall, a planner called about a trip deposit. She said my card was listed and had been declined. She read numbers that were not mine. My name sat on a bill I never agreed to pay. I called Anna. She did not pick up. I called again. She answered and laughed it off. She said there was confusion and that Mark had fixed it. I asked if my name had been used. She said everyone does that. She said it is just logistics. Trust stretched thin after that day. I tried to mend it with Sunday dinner. They arrived late. Mark asked for the Wi-Fi before he said hello. They ate quickly and left. The house felt emptier than before. I tell you this, not to blame my child. I tell you because small storms become floods when you ignore the sky. I wanted to keep peace, so I called silence a virtue. I told myself I was strong enough to carry the hurt alone. But quiet can teach a cruel lesson. Quiet tells the unkind they can keep taking. The night before the Florida trip, I asked if I could be near Noah on the beach. I promised not to be in the way. Anna said the resort had standards, and that I did not fit them. I looked up at a thin band of stars and told Ruth I could hear her voice. Stand up. Be gentle. Be firm. By the time I went back inside, I knew what had broken. Respect. And when respect is gone, you can beg for crumbs or you can stand. I turned off the light. I stood in the living room where memories live. I did not know yet how I would answer their cruelty. I only knew I would no longer accept it as my fate. The storm finally broke on a Saturday evening. I had been invited, or so I thought, to Noah's birthday dinner. I wrapped a gift in brown paper, an old baseball glove Ruth had kept in a cedar box. The leather was soft, the seams strong, the smell of linseed oil still faint after years. I imagined Noah's eyes lighting up when I told him it had been mine at his age. When I arrived at the restaurant, the hostess scanned her list and said, "No reservation under my name." I gave Anna's. She smiled politely and said, "That party requested no additional guests." My chest hollowed out. I stood in the foyer holding a paper-wrapped gift while families streamed past me. Through the glass wall, I saw Anna's table. long and glittering with candles. Mark raised a glass. His parents laughed. Noah blew out candles while everyone cheered. I pressed my hand to the cold glass and whispered his name. But my voice drowned in the noise. I turned away before anyone saw me. The glove felt heavy in my arms. I walked back to my car, each step echoing the truth. I had not been forgotten. I had been erased. The following week, Anna called. Her tone was light, almost mocking. Dad, you know these events are curated. We don't want you to feel uncomfortable. I asked why a grandfather would be unwelcome at his own grandson's birthday. She sighed as if explaining to a child. Because, Dad, you don't fit the image we're building. People notice. Clients notice. Isno biketh. Her words struck deeper than Mark's smirk or the laughter at Thanksgiving. She was not ashamed of poverty. She was ashamed of me. The man who carried her on his shoulders at the county fair. Who stayed up all night when fever shook her small body. Who built a dollhouse out of scrap wood because money was tight. That man no longer belonged. I sat on the porch that night, the baseball glove beside me, the copper pot gleaming faintly through the kitchen window. I thought of Ruth. She would have stormed into that restaurant, lifted Noah into her arms, and dared anyone to deny family its place. I am quieter by nature, but even quiet men reach a line. A week later, the final blow fell. Anna called to tell me about their upcoming trip to Florida. She described the resort in Miami Beach, the suites with ocean views, the private cabanas. She spoke quickly, each word sharpened by excitement. Then she said, Dad, please don't come. It's not for you. You'd only drag us down. I did leap down, I asked softly. Drag you down how? She hesitated. Mark's voice cut in from the background, clear and cruel. Because you look like a man who can't keep up. The resort has standards. You don't. I did leap down. Silence followed. I could hear Noah in the distance, asking who was on the phone. Anna lowered her voice. Just trust me. Dad. Stay home this time. When the call ended, the house felt smaller than ever. I laid the phone on the table and sat for a long time staring at the worn rug Ruth had chosen 30 years ago. I thought of every shift I worked, every dollar stretched, every scar on my hands. I thought of Anna as a girl chasing waves at the lake while Ruth waved from the shore. Somewhere between then and now, she had measured my worth in linens and chandeliers. I stood, walked to the mirror in the hallway, and met my own eyes. They were tired, but not broken. I whispered to Ruth's memory. They think I am less. They will see. I will know in the contour. That night, I placed the baseball glove back in its cedar box. I locked it in the cabinet, where I keep Ruth's letters. I promised myself that one day Noah would know the truth, not just about his grandfather's past, but about his dignity, and Anna would have to face the man she had mistaken for a burden. That night I sat at the kitchen table with the lights low and the house quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you hear your own breath. I placed the baseball glove beside the copper pot and waited for my hands to stop shaking. They did not. I opened the drawer where I keep rubber bands and nails and paper clips. At the back sat the cigar box Ruth once used for recipe cards. I set it in front of me and lifted the lid like a man lifting a stone that has covered something living. Inside were letters and folded papers and one photo of Ruth at the lake in a red dress that the wind loved. I touched the edge of the photo. I could hear her laugh, bright as sunlight on water. I could hear the way she used to say my name when she wanted me to stop working and come sit with her. For a long time, I did nothing but breathe and remember. Under the photo lay the envelope that changed our life. Years ago, when the shop cut hours, I started repairing school buses for the district to make ends meet. One winter, a boy slipped near a bus door and nearly fell under the tires. I could not sleep after that night. I sketched a simple sensor and latch that would keep the door from closing when a small weight pressed the step. An old friend from the machine shop helped me build a clean prototype. The district liked it. A safety firm from Chicago liked it more. They bought my design and the rights to improve it. They paid fairly and promised to install it in new fleets. Ruth cried when the first check arrived. Not because of the number, though it was more than we had ever seen at once, but because she said the idea would protect children I would never meet. We sat at this table and planned like two kids with a map. We paid off the house. We placed the rest in quiet places. Savings that grow slowly, bonds that pay on time. A modest basket of funds we did not touch. The attorney, Miss Carter, set the papers in order with a patience I trusted. We told almost no one. I remember Ruth that night. She held my hands and spoke with a calm that made me listen. "Keep living simply," she said. "Keep your head down. Money is a loud thing. It shouts. It draws out the worst in people and the best, but not always the truth. Promise me we will not let numbers decide who we are. Promise me you will watch our child carefully and learn her heart with your eyes, not with your hopes." I promised. Then the hard season came. The treatments, the long drives, the short sleep, the pain that speaks its own language. In the waiting room, Ruth would lean her head on my shoulder and whisper ideas for small trips when she felt stronger. She wanted to see the Gulf again. She wanted to hold Noah by the hands and teach him to float. On the last good afternoon, she placed her wedding ring in my palm and said, "Listen to me. Do not show the ledger until you have seen the soul. People reveal themselves in lean light. When love is thin, the truth is thick. Wait for truth. Then act with kindness and with spine." After the funeral, I kept the promise. I let the grass grow, then mowed it, then let it grow again. I boiled coffee in the old pot when the machine broke. I wore jackets that remembered other winters. I walked to work when the engine sounded wrong. I did these things because they were true to me, and because I wanted to see who saw me. Some did, some did not. My child, I told myself, will always find her way back. Love will be enough. For a while I believed it. The box also held a printed email from Miss Carter, 2 years old, reminding me that the trust documents were current. There is a line in that trust that Ruth asked us to include. Education for grandchildren first, then community projects that tie to safety for children. Then, only then, gifts to any adult who has shown good stewardship and good heart over time. When we signed it, Ruth said, "This is not punishment. This is a compass. It points to what matters." I read that line again and again while the clock ticked. I heard Anna say clients notice. I heard Mark laugh at my jacket. I heard Noah ask why old books smell like time. I saw my own face in the dark window and thought of the boy near the bus door. A simple latch had kept him safe. A simple promise could keep my heart safe now. Do not beg for seats at tables where love is measured in linens. Create a table where dignity is the only standard. Invite those who understand. Toward midnight, I put the papers in order. I wrote to Miss Carter and saved the draft. I would not send it with anger still hot. I would sleep first or try. I wrote to myself in the margin of a bank statement. Do not turn this lesson into revenge. Turn it into light for the children. Noah and his little sister deserve a story that teaches courage and care. If you must draw a line, draw it with a steady hand. I closed the box and carried it to the living room. The couch sagged in the middle like always. I sat where Ruth used to knit and tried to see the years ahead as a road and not as a wall. I pictured a quiet morning somewhere warm. A small room with a view of the ocean. A place where an old man could breathe and think and let salt air mend what pride had torn. I pictured walking down a hotel corridor with a steady step, not to show wealth, not to shame anyone, but to stand in the same light with my head up. Before bed, I knelt beside the cedar cabinet and placed the baseball glove on top. I told Ruth what had happened. I told her I had been erased from a birthday and then from a trip. I confessed that I wanted to shout. I promised that I would not. Show. Do not shout. She would say, teach. Do not crush. I turned off the lamp. In the dark, the copper pot held a thin circle of moon. I lay down and let the house breathe. Grief lay beside me. Heavy, but honest. Something else lay there too. Resolve. It did not feel like anger. It felt like a straight spine and a clear voice. Morning came clean and cold. I opened the curtains and watched light touch the copper pot. I brewed coffee and called Miss Carter. She answered on the second ring. I told her the truth. The birthday behind glass. The Florida trip I was barred from. The words, dead weight. I said I did not want to fight. I wanted order. She listened. Then she said, your documents are solid. No one can force guardianship. If you wish, we can lock education funds for the grandchildren. Do it, I said. 2 trusts. One for Noah, one for Paige. Make them safe from adult hands. Add a letter that explains the why in plain words. No punishment. A compass. She promised drafts by evening and asked where to send final papers. Miami, I said. When I hung up, I opened the cigar box. Ruth's ring lay in its cloth. I held it and whispered, I will not shout. I will not beg. I will show. I put the ring away and pulled out my old address book. First, Harold Green, the executive who bought my bus door latch. He once sent condolences in his own hand. He picked up, Robert, what can I do? I told him I was traveling to Miami and wanted to fund a small program in Ruth's name. Seat checks, driver training, sensors for older buses, quiet help. He paused. Then he said, give me a day. We supply that district. We will make it happen. Second, Elena Torres, now a hotel manager in Miami Beach. Years ago, she mowed lawns on our street to save for tuition. She answered with joy, Mr. Hale, is that you? I asked for a quiet room near the resort where my family would stay. I also asked about any community night for child safety. She said the city hosts one this week on the boardwalk. Lights, helmets, patrol cars. It could use a sponsor. In Ruth's name, I said. Elena gave me a modest figure. I agreed at once. She promised to coordinate with the district and to keep my name quiet. The honor would be Ruth's. A plan took shape. Not a spectacle. A lantern. I made a short list. Flight. A small hotel called the Seabright. 2 blocks north of the big resort. Clothes that fit and do not brag. Shoes I can shine. A haircut from Gus, the barber who once cried with Ruth. At noon, I walked to the shop. Gus kept the blue comb jar by the mirror. He trimmed the back of my neck and patted my shoulder the way men say, I see you. Back home. I pressed my suit. Charcoal. Simple. 2 white shirts. 1 navy tie with small dots. I polished my watch. I tucked Ruth's ring and my papers into a cedar box and wrapped it in a sweater. I set the baseball glove on the suitcase. I wrote a note for myself and slid it into the inside pocket. Lead with dignity. Do not use it as a weapon. By evening, 3 messages waited. Elena confirmed the suite and car service that would not draw eyes. Harold sent the number for the district's transportation director and added a line I read twice. Your latch kept a boy from being hurt last year. The driver asked us to thank you. Miss Carter sent drafts for the trusts and for the letter. She would overnight the final pages to Miami. I booked a morning window seat and finished packing. Sleep came in pieces and left early. Dawn rinsed the sky. The car arrived on time. As we pulled away, I looked once at the kitchen window. The copper pot held a square of light. It felt like Ruth saying, "Go." At the airport, I moved with the line. A child waved a stuffed dog at me. I waved back. On the plane, I closed my eyes and pictured the boardwalk at dusk. Booths with string lights. Ocean, breathing in and out. A sign that would read, "In honor of Ruth Hale," who kept watch. Miami smelled like sun and salt. Elena's driver met me with a small card that had my name. The sea bright rose white against blue. The lobby was bright and kind. Elena walked out from behind the desk and hugged me like family. "Your room is ready," she said. "The city approved the event. The district is grateful. We placed your legal papers on the desk with a good pen." The suite was modest and full of light. From the balcony, I could see the big resort down the beach. Cabanas in a line. Umbrellas like shells. Somewhere in that glitter, my daughter laughed and did not think of me. I slipped on walking shoes and went down to the boardwalk. Crews measured spaces for tents. A man tested a light and nodded. On the phone, the transportation director introduced herself as Miss Wright. She sounded tired in the way good people get tired. I told her about Ruth. I asked that the dedication include the drivers. "They keep the latch honest," I said. She went quiet, then cleared her throat. "We will make a plaque," she said. "It will say, 'For Ruth, and for the hands that keep children safe.'" Pride rose in me. Not the kind that struts, the kind that steadies a spine. I thanked her. I thanked Elena. I thanked Harold. Then I thanked Ruth out loud. Evening slid in. I could hear music from the resort. Laughter. A saxophone. The kind of night that lets people mistake glitter for blessing. I went back to the room and signed Miss Carter's drafts in careful strokes. I sealed the envelopes and set them by the door. I laid the baseball glove on the table and shaped the pocket with my fist. The leather sighed. Tomorrow the tents would go up. Tomorrow lights would glow. Tomorrow I would stand where any man can stand if he has a steady heart. And be seen. I woke before dawn to the sound of waves against the seawall. Miami light bled slowly through the curtains. Pale at first, then gold. I brewed hotel coffee, bitter and strong, and stood on the balcony with the cup warming my hands. Below, workers arranged folding chairs on the boardwalk. A banner unfurled. Community Safety Night. In honor of Ruth Hale. My throat tightened at the sight of her name swaying in sea wind. By noon, the Seabright buzzed with tourists. I walked the 2 blocks to the larger resort. Its marble columns gleamed like a palace. Families lounged under umbrellas while staff hurried with trays. I kept to the shade and watched. There, by the pool, sat Anna in a white dress, sunglasses tilted just so. Mark leaned back beside her, laughing too loudly. Noah tossed a ball with his little sister Paige. I stepped closer, heart tugging me forward. When I heard voices from the shaded cabana, Mark's tone was sharp. Clipped. "We can't keep covering for him. If he shows up, we'll tell everyone he's confused, unstable. It'll explain everything." A1 said on. Anna's reply cut like glass. "It's the only way. People already ask why he lives in that crumbling house. If we say he's struggling with memory, they'll pity us, not judge us. No one can ever know he has money. If he did, why would he live like that?" "Exactly," Mark said. "We position ourselves as the responsible ones. If we push for guardianship, we control whatever tiny assets he has left. Even the house. We could sell it and put the money towards something worthwhile. Potential." The words stabbed deeper than any rejection. It wasn't only shame they felt, it was calculation. They had dressed lies as concern. They would strip me of dignity, even freedom, and call it kindness. I stepped back into sunlight, every nerve alive. For a moment I thought of storming in, raising my voice, demanding the truth, but Ruth's voice rang clear. Show. Don't shout. That evening the boardwalk came alive. Strings of lights flickered on, painting the night in warm gold. Families gathered, children holding balloons, music floating on salt air. I stood near the banner, my suit pressed, watch gleaming faintly under lamps. The district director spoke of safety, of children protected by one man's idea. Then she said Ruth's name. Applause swelled. My chest rose with it. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw them, Anna, Mark. The children drawn by the crowd. They froze when they recognized me standing near the plaque. Anna's smile faltered, then returned too quickly. She slipped her arm through Mark's and walked forward with practiced grace. Dad, she said brightly, voice just loud enough for others to hear. What a surprise. She leaned close, hissing through her teeth. What are you doing here? Before I could answer, Noah darted forward. Grandpa, he threw his arms around my waist, his joy unfiltered, unashamed. Paige clapped her hands and echoed. Grandpa! Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some turned, recognizing the connection. The district director looked puzzled, then smiled warmly at me. Mr. Hale, your family must be proud. One, Athri. Mark's jaw tightened. Anna's nails dug into his arm. Of course, she said quickly. We've been supporting him through some health struggles. He's not always. Her voice trailed as she noticed me standing tall, clear-eyed, steady. I placed a hand on Noah's shoulder and spoke loud enough for the nearby circle to hear. I'm grateful to stand here tonight. Ruth believed every child deserved safety, and I'm honored the city carries her dream forward. My voice did not shake. The director nodded, unaware of the storm beneath the words. Applause rose again. Anna's smile grew brittle, her facade cracking under the weight of eyes upon us. She had painted me as fragile, confused. Yet here I stood, composed, honored, surrounded by light and by truth. That night in my hotel room I sat by the window, staring at the ocean, her heart both heavy and strong. Their plan to erase me had failed. They had seen me not as weak, but as something they could not control. Tomorrow, I knew, would bring confrontation, but tonight belonged to Ruth, to dignity, to the steady truth of who I was. Word of the dedication spread along the beach overnight. By late afternoon, the boardwalk was a river of people. Children tugged parents toward the tents, where officers fitted helmets and drivers showed the safe door latch. The banner moved gently in the wind. Community Safety Night in honor of Ruth Hale. I stood near the stage in a pressed shirt and felt my heart drum like a steady engine. The director stepped to the microphone. She spoke about buses and mornings and the small hands that climb those steps. She told the story of the near accident on an icy day and the simple idea that prevented it. Then she looked toward me and asked if I would join her. A cheer rose. My name carried across the speakers and out over the sea. I walked up the steps and faced the lights. I could see faces but not eyes. I kept my voice low and clear. Ruth believed safety was love in work clothes. She believed quiet ideas save loud lives. Tonight we honor drivers who keep watch. We honor children who trust adults to do the right thing. Thank you for letting me stand here for her. The crowd clapped. It sounded like rain on a roof. At the edge of the cordoned area, I saw them. Anna in a bright dress that demanded attention. Mark with his chin lifted high. Noah and Paige on their toes to see. A photographer from the local paper raised a camera. The flash popped and faded. The director handed me a small plaque wrapped in blue cloth and read the words, "In honor of Ruth Hale and the hands that keep children safe. Sponsored by the Hale Fund for Student Transport." Anna stiffened at the word fund. Mark leaned toward her and spoke fast. Then he cut through the crowd and climbed the side steps with a smile that did not reach his eyes. He reached for the microphone with practiced charm. "Thank you for supporting our family friend," he said. "My father-in-law has had some difficult months. We are all so proud he could be here." I stepped forward and took the microphone back with 2 fingers. "Thank you, Mark," I said. My voice stayed steady. "I am not ill. I am not confused. I am simply a man who kept his life simple so he could see clearly. There is no struggle to explain. There is only grief that becomes service." The officer at the front smiled at me. The photographer lifted the camera again. Mark tried to laugh. He said families sometimes disagree and that stress makes people say odd things. Anna arrived on stage. Her smile hard as glass. She faced the crowd. "Thank you for your kindness to my father. He has been through so much. We have guided him through medical decisions and finances. We are grateful for your support." Several heads turned to me. The director looked uncertain. I could feel the story tipping. I chose my next words like a man placing stones to cross a river. I thanked the city again. I thanked the drivers by name. I spoke about the latch and the boy who did not fall. Then I said one true sentence and let it stand. The Hale Fund will purchase new door sensors for every route in this district by the start of the next term. The cheer that followed washed away every hint of doubt. The director shook my hand hard. A reporter asked for a short comment. I gave him one. Ruth would be pleased. "Keep the focus on the drivers." He nodded and wrote. The flash went off again. Anna's smile faltered. Mark stared at the plaque as if numbers might appear on it. When the formal program ended, families drifted to the booths. Children tried seatbelts on a demo bench. Officers showed how a stop arm works. I stepped down from the stage. Noah ran to me and took my hand. His palm was small and hot. "Grandpa, did you make the thing that keeps kids safe?" I told him I helped. He said he wanted to try the demo. Paige jumped beside him and asked for a sticker. A volunteer peeled 2 and placed them on their shirts. Anna pulled me aside with a grip that hurt. "What are you doing?" she hissed. "You are making us look like fools. People will think you have money and they will ask questions." I kept my voice even. "People will think I honored your mother. Both can be true." She accused me of ambushing her. She said I enjoyed humiliating my own child in public. I told her the public part was not my choice. The lies were hers. Mark joined us. Jaw set. He said I had manipulated the optics. He said I had staged a scene. Elena walked up just then with a folder and a calm smile. "Mr. Hale, the letters for Noah and Paige are ready for notarizing in the morning. The trusts are titled as you requested. Education first. Community projects second." She glanced at Anna. Polite and neutral. Then at Mark. Then back to me. "Will 10 suit you?" "10 will be fine," I said. 2 resort guests lingered within earshot. The reporter stood nearby, pretending to check his camera. Anna tried to recover. She told Elena there must be a mistake. There was no mistake. Elena said the documents were in order. She thanked me for the sponsorship and walked away. A hush seemed to fall inside our small circle. Even while music played and laughter rolled. Anna looked at the banner. She looked at Noah's sticker. I watched her face move through shock into anger and then into something closer to fear. Mark spoke first. He said this was reckless. He said I should have told them. I said I tried to tell them many things. Please do not confuse silence for ignorance. I added. Noah tugged my sleeve. Grandpa, can we watch the lights with you? I smiled and led him and Paige toward the rail. The ocean breathed in and out like a living thing. From behind, I could hear Anna and Mark arguing. Their words snapped like twigs. The reporter walked past and tipped his head. He had heard enough to shape a story. I held the rail with one hand and Noah's wrist with the other. I thought of Ruth. I thought of the promise in our kitchen. Do not shout. Show. A breeze lifted the banner. My wife's name rose and fell in the golden light. The truth was out in the open. Not all of it. Enough for eyes to see that I was not what they had called me. Tomorrow would be for documents and for the last facts. Tonight I stood where anyone can stand if he refuses to bow to lies. I let the sea air steady me. I let the lights burn. The morning after the boardwalk event, the phone in my room rang before breakfast. It was the reporter from the local paper. His tone carried both excitement and caution. He wanted to confirm a few details about the Hale Fund and the story behind the latch. He said the community deserved accuracy. I told him the truth in simple lines. A bus step. A child. A sketch in the night. A company that believed. He asked if I would grant a longer interview. I declined. The story was Ruth's, not mine. He understood. He promised the article would honor her name. By the time I walked to the cafe across from the resort, the first copies of the paper were stacked by the door. On the front page was a photo of me, standing with Noah on one side and Paige on the other, their stickers bright against their shirts. The headline read, "Local grandfather funds safety upgrades for district buses." Below, a smaller line, "Family legacy inspires generosity." I sat with my coffee and watched guests from the resort pass by. Some paused to pick up the paper. Some glanced at me and then again at the photo. Recognition moved across their faces. Whispers spread. The lie of frailty had begun to collapse under the weight of print. At mid-morning, I saw Mark striding across the lobby of the resort, paper crushed in his fist. He found me outside the cafe and leaned close. "You've made us look like liars," he hissed. I met his eyes. "You didn't need my help for that." His face flushed red. He warned that people would ask where the money came from. He warned that they could still file for guardianship, still control the narrative. I smiled faintly. "Control requires consent," I said, "and mine is gone." Instead was never. Anna appeared soon after. Her sunglasses hid her eyes, but her voice trembled. "Dad, why didn't you tell us? Why did you hide everything?" I answered softly so only she could hear. "Because your mother wanted to know your true heart before she left her legacy in your hands. She believed money reveals. And now, Anna, we both know what it revealed." They were then. Her shoulders sagged. For a moment she looked like the girl who once sang on our old couch. Then she straightened. Mask returning. She said the trusts were unfair. That Noah and Paige were too young to understand. I told her fairness had been broken the night she barred me from her table. The trusts would ensure love reached forward, even if it skipped a generation. That evening, Elena delivered the notarized documents to my room. Each envelope sealed. Each name clear. Noah Hale Education Trust. Paige Hale Education Trust. A copy for the district. A copy for the lawyer. I placed them carefully in the cedar box and locked it. Later, I walked the beach at dusk. The water turned silver. The air salt and cool. Families strolled. Children ran in the surf. I thought of Ruth. I thought of her hand on mine. Her whisper. Wait for truth. Then act with spine. I had waited. The truth had come. It had hurt deeper than bone, but it had set me free. The second article came out by noon. A longer piece. It quoted the transportation director. It printed a photo of drivers holding the plaque with Ruth's name. It mentioned the new sensors that would be installed before school started again. By early afternoon, strangers nodded to me on the boardwalk. Some said thank you. A few clasped my hand with both of theirs. I felt grateful and a little lost. I had wanted privacy. What I received was attention soaked in kindness. I tried to accept it with grace. Anna texted and asked to meet in a quiet place. I chose the small lounge at the Seabright where the chairs are soft and the lamps are low. She arrived first. Mark came moments later. Jaw tight. Shirt crisp. Eyes bright with arguments. I did not stand. I asked them to sit. I poured water for all of us. I folded my hands on the table. I told them I would speak first. I said I would not raise my voice and that I expected the same. They nodded in stiff agreement. I looked at my daughter and felt the ache of 1,000 yesterdays. Then I began. I told them about the winter night by the school bus. I told them about the sketch on a paper towel. I told them about the old friend who made the prototype and the firm that believed. I told them I had been paid fairly and had placed the money where it could grow in quiet rooms. I told them Ruth made me promise to live simply and to watch for the truth in people. I said I kept that promise because I loved her and because I needed to know who we were when no one clapped. I slid the attorney's letter across the table. Miss Carter had written in clear words that my mind was sound, my estate protected, and my wishes recorded. I slid the trust summaries next. One for Noah, one for Paige. Education first. Then safety projects for other children. After that, only adults who had shown good heart over time. I let the papers rest between us, like stones that could not be moved by mood. Anna's hands trembled. She touched the edge of the letter and then pulled her fingers back as if it were hot. She whispered that she had no idea. I told her she did not need to know the sums to know my worth. All she needed was a memory. The broken sleep when she was small and feverish. The bent back in winter snow. The old car that rattled but made it to every concert. She closed her eyes and nodded once. A small motion, like a curtain stirring before a storm. Mark spoke. He said I had been dishonest by omission. He said people with resources have a duty to be transparent with family. He said appearances matter. I told him, duty begins with truth. I told him appearances had been used to shame me and to excuse cruelty. I told him he had filmed me fixing a sink as if I were content for his followers. He started to defend himself. I raised a hand. Not today. I turned back to my daughter. I said her words had cut deeper than she knew. Not the words about money. The words about shame. I told her the night at the restaurant when I stood behind glass and watched my grandson blow out candles. Alone would not fade. I told her the call about Florida had broken something that had taken years to build. Respect. I said the lie about my mind had almost taken the rest. She covered her face with both hands and cried. Not the pretty tears of a show. The hard tears that shake a body. I passed her a handkerchief I still carry because Ruth liked men who prepared for sorrow with clean cloth. When she could speak, she asked if the trusts meant she was erased from my love. I said nothing could erase her from my love. But love without boundaries becomes a rope that drags a man through gravel. The trusts were not a door closing. They were a path for the next feet in our line to walk safely. Mark asked how large the funds were. I looked at him until he looked away. Then I said the number did not matter as much as the lesson. Ruth believed lessons outlive money. He said he wanted to repair things. He said he had been foolish. He said stress had warped his better side. I told him repair takes time. It also takes truth told without makeup. He nodded. Stiff at first. Then slower. More human. I opened the cedar box and took out the baseball glove. I told a short story. A boy and a summer field and a father who taught him to catch by placing his hand over the boy's hand and guiding the leather into the arc of the ball. I placed the glove on the table. I said I had hoped to give it to Noah at his birthday. I said I still hoped to give it to him. I said the gift would come with a story about dignity and about kindness that holds its ground. There was a long silence in that small room. Traffic sounded faint, like a river in another world. I could almost hear Ruth humming in our kitchen years ago. Anna reached across the table. Her fingers were cold. She said she was sorry. For the birthday. For the Florida call. For the lie about my mind. She said she had been chasing rooms that praised emptiness. She said she wanted to come home in a way that was real. Not to the house. To the truth. I felt my throat tighten, and I let it. I told her there would be a seat at my table if she came with respect. She nodded hard, as if fixing a knot. I stood and walked to the window. The sun flashed off the water. I thought of the drivers who would watch their mirrors on Monday with a little more help. I thought of children who would step onto buses with hands that trust. I thought of Ruth, who had asked me to wait for truth and then act with spine. I had waited. I had acted. The acting hurt, but the hurt felt clean. We walked out together into the late light. On the sidewalk, Noah ran toward me. He had the paper folded under his arm. He asked if he could have a catch on the beach at sunset. I told him yes. He asked if the glove in my hand was for him. I told him soon. He smiled and shouted to Paige. She jumped and spun and shouted back. The sound rose above the surf and made strangers smile. That evening, as the sky bruised purple and gold, I stood with my grandson by the water and tossed a soft ball until the horizon swallowed the sun. Anna watched from a few steps back. Her face was bare. No mask. In that light, she looked like the child who sang on our old couch. Mark stood beside her with his hands in his pockets and a posture that said he had more to learn and might be willing to learn it. When the ball finally fell still, Noah handed me the glove and leaned his head against my side. I looked up and whispered to the woman I loved, "We are not finished, Ruth. But we are on our way." The days that followed were quieter on the surface. But beneath them currents pulled. The article about the fund continued to ripple through the city. Parents I had never met stopped me at crosswalks to thank me. A teacher pressed a note into my hand that said simply, "Your wife would be proud." I carried that note in my pocket like a shield. Inside the resort, though, the mood was different. I heard whispers. Staff spoke of Anna and Mark as people who had painted one story and now faced another. They had described me as frail, confused, nearly incompetent. But guests had seen me honored, had seen my name tied to something steady and real. Appearances shifted. Their polished image had cracks. One afternoon, Anna came to my hotel room. She did not bring Mark. She sat on the edge of the chair and twisted her wedding ring. She asked if the trusts meant she was cut out completely. I told her the truth. She would receive nothing directly. Everything would pass through her children and through projects that serve the vulnerable. Her face flushed. Tears welled. Then steadied. She said she understood even if it hurt. I told her hurt can either carve space or make scars. Which it becomes depends on how you carry it. Later that evening, Mark cornered me in the lobby. His words carried bitterness. He accused me of humiliating him, of sabotaging his future. I asked him plainly, "What future did you expect from lies?" He spoke about leverage, about opportunities, about networks that depend on impressions. I told him impressions collapse when pressed by truth. He left without answering. That night I walked the beach alone. The tide dragged foam across my shoes. I thought of Ruth and the promise we made. That money would not decide our souls. I realized the real inheritance was not currency but character. I whispered it into the sea. Let the children inherit dignity first. On the final day of the trip, Elena arranged a small gathering in the lounge. The director of transportation presented a framed copy of the plaque for me to keep. Noah and Paige stood proudly beside me. Anna hovered nearby, uncertain, her eyes red from nights of hard thinking. Mark kept his distance. Cameras clicked. But I felt no performance. Only gravity. Afterward, I returned to my room. I unlocked the cedar box and placed the framed plaque beside Ruth's ring and the glove. I sat in the stillness and breathed. I thought of how far silence and patience had carried me. I thought of the danger of letting cruelty pass unchecked. Most of all, I thought of the line between mercy and consequence. That evening, Anna knocked again. She carried no pretense this time. She knelt by my chair and placed her head against my arm. She whispered, "I don't want your money. I want your forgiveness." I rested my hand on her hair, the way I did when she was a child afraid of storms. I said, "Forgiveness is always possible. But trust must be rebuilt like a house, brick by brick, with steady hands, not with words alone." She nodded into my sleeve. When she left, I stood at the window and watched the city lights tremble on the water. The world outside seemed noisy, but inside me a stillness settled. I had faced the lies, revealed the truth, and placed the future where it belonged. The children would grow with memory, not myth. My daughter had seen her reflection at last. It was not an ending yet. It was the shape of a new beginning. One carved from consequence, anchored by love that refused to die even when bruised. I flew home on a morning that smelled like rain. The clouds over Cleveland hung low, soft as wool. In the kitchen, the copper pot waited on the stove, clean and bright. I set my suitcase by the door and opened the windows. Cool air moved through the rooms like a blessing. The house did not feel empty. It felt ready. I made coffee the slow way because Ruth taught me to respect ordinary rituals. While it brewed, I laid the framed plaque on the table and placed her ring beside it. Sunlight slid across the wood. I spoke out loud as if she were in the doorway with a towel over her shoulder. I told her I had done what we promised. Quiet first. Spine next. Mercy where it fit. Consequence where it had to stand. Near noon there was a knock. I wiped my hands and opened the door. Anna stood on the porch, holding a paper grocery bag. Her eyes were bare. No sunglasses. Noah and Paige hovered behind her, whispering to each other. She lifted the bag with both hands and tried to smile. "I brought food," she said. "I do not know if it is right, but I wanted to try." We cooked in a silence that was not afraid. She chopped onions and blinked at the sting. I stirred the pot and watched steam rise. Noah set the table with mismatched plates and a concentration that made me smile. Paige folded napkins into small, crooked boats. When we sat, I took Anna's hand and said grace the way Ruth used to. Simple and full. For food. For breath. For another chance. After lunch, I brought out the cedar box. I placed the baseball glove in Noah's lap. He traced the seams with his thumb. His face grew solemn in a way I had only seen at church. "Is it mine?" he asked. "It is ours," I said. "Yours to use. Mine to remember." He nodded like a boy who understands a sacred loan. Paige asked if the ring was a treasure. I told her yes, and that I would tell her the story when she is older. In the late light, Anna followed me to the porch. She leaned on the rail and watched the street where she learned to ride a bike. I could see her searching for a place to begin. When she spoke, her voice came quiet. "The worst part is not the trusts. It is that I let other people decide what love should look like." I said that can happen to anyone who is scared of being small. She asked if I would trust her again. I said trust is a bridge built from both sides. I will work on my side every day. She said she would too. The kids chased each other through the yard while the sky turned the color of peaches. I felt Ruth everywhere at once. In the steam on the window. In the shine of the pot I had polished for years. In the way Noah's laughter rose and fell like a tide. I felt her most in the quiet place that had stopped aching and started to hum. Not joy. Not yet. Something steadier. peace with a scar. When it was time to go, Anna lingered at the door. She pressed her forehead to mine like she had as a child on nights when thunder walked the roofs. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not shouting, for not giving up on me." I told her I had come close. She nodded as if a weight had finally found the ground. She gathered the children and turned back at the gate. "Dad," she said, "may I come tomorrow and learn to make the stew the right way?" I said, "There is no right way. Only the way we make when we stand side by side." She smiled through tears and left with the bag looped over her arm. The house settled. I washed the bowls and set them to dry. I placed Ruth's ring back in its cloth and slid the box into the cabinet. Outside, the first stars pressed through a thin veil of cloud. I pulled on my jacket and stepped into the yard. The air smelled like cut grass and rain. I lifted my face to the dark and spoke to the woman who taught me that love is a work of hands. I told her the children would be safe. I told her our daughter had turned toward the light. I told her I had stood up without hate. A train sounded far off. A dog barked twice and fell quiet. Somewhere a porch light clicked on. Then another, as if the neighborhood agreed to keep watch with me. I closed my eyes and let tears find their own path. They tasted like salt and relief. I put my palm flat on my heart and felt it answer. I am here. I am still the man you married. The man who carries love with a straight back. The man who finally learned that dignity is not a wall against pain. It is the door that opens when you refuse to lie about what hurts and still choose to love.